Hey guys, Kevpert here, and today I'm covering Directional Air Roll. If you're thinking about changing your controller settings to add air roll left or right, or even moving them onto your triggers, then watch this video. We're going to go in depth on controller settings, discuss the merits of putting directional air roll on triggers, and then I'll show you how to build your car control super fast from the ground up, just as if you had mapped air roll left or right for the first time. Let's get into it. Let's talk about controller settings. I think a top tier controller setting will have normal air roll left, and air roll right bound, where you can press them instantly and easily. Also, you can put air roll left and right on triggers. We'll get more into that later. The big problem with your average controller is that there's not enough buttons to achieve all these conditions, so you're a little limited on a normal controller if you want to have air roll left, air roll right, and normal air roll bound, which is what I believe is the gold standard. So that's why I'd recommend getting controller paddles. There's a few options. You can get an aftermarket controller like Scuffs, but they're over $200 US. An Xbox Elite controller will have 4 paddles. They run about $180 US. But there's these Sony paddle attachments that are only $30. There's no DS5 equivalent, so I've stayed on DS4s for this reason. But I can't recommend these enough. The build quality is insanely good. Just getting these $30 paddles will open up 2 extra buttons that you can play with. So if you don't want to mess with any of your current controls, just bind air roll left and right to the paddles. That's your easiest option. Let's talk about mapping the triggers or buttons. So to demonstrate, I put air roll right on R1, so you can see whenever I press that, I reach max roll speed. When I use air roll left on my left trigger, you can see I can control the speed based on how I press down the trigger. So you could definitely get finer control of your car with directional air roll on your triggers. For a player that's using it on a button, you have to tap that button to slow your air roll, and it's kind of this herky-jerky movement, and it's just not going to be as smooth as a trigger. So it's another thing to consider. So I should mention my controller settings since they're so highly optimized. I have air roll left and right on my triggers, normal air roll on my left paddle, and all these bindings are easily pressed. I don't have to lift my thumb off the right 3 buttons of triangle, circle, jump to press square to air roll or something like that. Now there is one trade-off, and that's drive forward on R1. That's a button and not a trigger, but it was pretty easy to get used to. Of course, there are KBM players at the pro level like Torsauce. Evample's also an elite freestyler and he's KBM as well, so it can't be that big of a problem. Let's say you decided on trying out a new directional air roll for the first time, so you're unfamiliar with how directional air roll works. What we're going to do is reduce gravity to -100 in box mod and just give it a go. So let's start floating in the air. Press one of your directional air roll buttons and move your left stick in one of the 4 directions. So here I'm moving it down, here to the right, and I'm periodically just boosting to maintain my height. Whenever you lose control, just let go of air roll, point your nose up, and go again. When you start feeling familiar at a certain gravity, and you're starting to get a hang of the controls, move the gravity up a little bit, so now we're going to 250, and we just do the same thing, 4 different directions, and see if you can handle it. Eventually, you're going to get to a level where you can do it at default gravity. And we're going to do this ball can drill where we try floating around the ball, but holding directional air roll and moving the left stick in one of the 4 different directions. Up, down, left, and right. Now in these demonstrations, I've only demonstrated using air roll left. Put equal time in both the directional air rolls. If one is weaker than the other, dedicate a little more time to that one so that you can get it to a strong level as well. Next, we're going to use the Slalom training map by Deadzone, and we're going to reduce the gravity to about -300, go into normal gravity straight smaller pillar, and we're going to hold one of the air rolls, and we're going to hold up on the stick. So it's just a very simple one where you move up, and you point your car to the left here and go through the pillar, and then you do the same, and now you're pointing to the right, and this just gets you familiar with how to turn using each of the 4 directions. Even though this is easy training, you'll want to stay patient. For Diamond Plus players, you'll only have to do this level for a few days since these movements are already familiar to you. For lower level players, the number one thing you want to do is build good habits and stick to a routine. Try to commit to something for 30 days or more. The number one problem I see is a player will often do it for a few days, get bored, stop doing it, and then they get frustrated that they're stuck at a rank. At the lower ranks, if you commit to training, you'll shoot through ranks and the game becomes a lot more fun. Once you're comfortable with your control at a certain gravity level, you just increase the gravity a little bit, and that's how you'll slowly ramp up the difficulty as you go up and down these pillars. This way the difficulty is always customized to your current level. Now try to find that level where it's a challenge for you, but it feels doable. Next we'll go into a rings map like Lethermia's rings. We're going to reduce the gravity and just start feathering a boost and tapping air roll every now and then and combining that with a direction and see what you can do. If you find at your current gravity level that you lose control of your car, good. That level might be a little too difficult for you, so we're going to reduce the gravity just a tiny bit and go again where it's a little less punishing. What's really nice about working at low gravity levels is you can experiment with a lot of directional air roll in different left stick directions, and you won't get punished for it. It's still a challenge at the end of the day, but not too challenging. It's really targeted reps where you need them. Eventually, and it might take a couple weeks of practice, you'll get to a level where you feel like you can do it at default gravity. Notice how my stick inputs aren't just in the 4 directions anymore. After you master up, down, left, and right, start expanding into the diagonal stick inputs a little bit. It'll start making sense for you how tornado spins blend into twists after a while. I'm just rolling the stick along the edges and just seeing what happens. When you're starting out, this might be a little frustrating, but trust the process. You'll see results quickly, but it's important to be non-judgmental in your training and just enjoy the challenge. That's how you improve. Obviously, you want to mix in different obstacle course and rings maps just to give yourself some variety in your training, and some are going to be more difficult than others, and that's one way you can ramp up the difficulty. Level 4 is the Ganer Method. Now I've talked about this before on my channel, but Gainer's probably the greatest freestyler of all time for me, and he pushed the limits of what was possible in an extraordinary way. No one else had that kind of impact. But he came up with this genius training method where you hold directional air roll and boost continuously, and you never let go. So this footage was filmed on day 30 of my training with these new controls. I grinded really hard on obstacle course maps, around 20 to 30 minutes a day, and then did 40 minutes of low gravity air dribbles as well on workshop maps. That's how I got to this level so quickly. Now let's compare that to some of my footage on day 1 of my new controls, where I'm having lots of blackout moments in my air roll right control. Now I was familiar with air roll right because I had it on a button for years, but this was the first day I had it on a trigger, and you can see I'm barely in control of my car here. There's tons of blackout moments. I feel like a pretty big crash is coming up, and this doesn't seem salvageable. But this was a typical experience in the first few days. When you're in a steep part of the learning curve, it's difficult work, but it's rapid growth. And you can see where I'm at now, 30 days later. It's so possible for you to have the same results or even better. The next and final level of difficulty is doing air dribbles with lower gravity. So here I'm at a level where I can do level 10 on the Gauntlet workshop map at negative 350 gravity. But as I talked about in my previous training plan videos, which are linked in the description, this is a 2-year project for me. I eventually want to be able to air dribble through these maps at default gravity, but I may never get there. But I know that every couple weeks I can move that gravity slider one little increment closer to my goal and just keep improving. And that's good enough for me. That brings us to the end. The whole point of this video was to basically show you if you change your settings to add new directional air roll, you can get amazing improvement in just 30 days of practice. Follow the training plans in the videos linked below and you'll catch up to and even surpass your old level in no time at all. I also want to hear what you guys think. Are you considering changing your bindings? Have you found a gold standard controller setting? Drop that in the comments and it might help someone out. Thanks for watching and good luck.